Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back. I suppose this is our spooky little Halloween special. I'm keeping it simple on my face. I was gonna do a get ready with me style thing, but I'm sleepy. So this is what we're getting. I thought of this in 5 minutes and it's going on my face. I'm not even wearing makeup for Halloween this year, because if I did, it would be offensive. If I tried to make myself look like the person I'm dressing as, it wouldn't be decent. Because I'm dressing as Shinsuke Nakamura. If I painted my face to look like a Japanese man, that wouldn't be alright. But anyway, today's Halloween special is brought to you by Night Terrors by Alice Vernon. I'll be upfront about the fact that I do know Alice. She was my personal tutor during my masters and had taught me during my undergrad as well. But I am here to be brain. But I am here to be as objective as one can be when you know somebody. And to be honest, there's very little difference, as far as can tell. There's very little difference between what this looks like and what this would have looked like had I not known her. I think there's one comment that I make about having had her as my tutor, that had I taken this out, the review would not be that much different. So let's take a deep dive into the world of parasomnias and troubled sleep, and all of the ways that we as people come to terms with that and often create fiction in order to wrap our heads around it. The first thing I want to mention is the cover itself. It is quite simple, and I don't know how well it will pick up on camera. So you've got, I don't know who the artist is, I can't remember, but I'll put a picture up and the artist name. It is, I know it's called The Nightmare, very fitting, obviously, but it's only really visible on the shiny letters of the title itself. I'm not sure who designed that or who made that design choice, but it's a brilliant choice, and I think it's just, it's subtle, but it's just stunning, and I loved it. Loved it. Christ alive, this is going to be a long review. We start the book with a sense of, oh, there's a rainbow. Sorry, that's the most ADHD I've ever looked. Like, stereotypical ADHD, trying to talk and immediately distracted by something like a dog with a squirrel, but anyway, let's get back onto it. This book opens with a sense of dread that persists throughout the rest of the novel. It's not particularly surprising either, whether you are somebody who suffers with parasomnias or not. I think you can understand that sleep is when we are at our most vulnerable, so any problems we have pertaining to sleep are going to feel really quite harrowing. You know, that vulnerable state is why our pets only sleep on their backs when they're particularly comfortable with us, you know? And I'll be very honest, I am somebody who's dealt with a fair whack of sleep problems throughout my entire life, honestly, as far back as I can remember. I've got a fair whack of things rattling about this head, which certainly don't help. For a lot of people, they perhaps have troubled sleep when they're a child, but often grow out of it with occasional things showing up throughout our lives. But for me, troubled sleep is something that persists, particularly with anything to do with dreams. For me, that's something that I've always had particular trouble with, and I want to carry this honesty throughout the rest of this review, because it is something that's seen throughout the book. That honesty can help because it makes other people feel seen about it, because sleep isn't something we talk about. And I'm not going to go into the details of the things rattling in my brain, but I will be bringing up some of my personal things just as a kind of background. And for me, dream stuff is a problem due to things like dissociation, which I'll be coming on to later. And while this book doesn't cover that, because it's not about that, a lot of the topics discussed surrounding dreams in particular did speak to me in a particular way, not to sound a bit like a 13-year-old listening to My Chemical Romance for the first time. But I want to make it clear, this is a far cry from a depressing book. This isn't something that is focusing on the negative while still remaining about some of the horrible aspects of sleep. There's a pretty big sense of optimism that comes throughout this book, even with that kind of dread that sits there alongside it. And I think the biggest thing that helps this book is the tone. I was quite worried that this would be less creative non-fiction and more academic paper, because I wasn't sure what to expect. Now, while I have only ever been taught creative writing by Alice, that doesn't mean that this was going to be more on the, creative than academic side of things. But it is safe to say that this sits on the more casual side than the more academic side, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Now, while both of these books have a much more comedic overtone, both of them, I believe, written by comedians. I know that Andrew O'Neill is, and I'm pretty sure Jim Smallman is as well. I was reminded of History of Heavy Metal by Andrew O'Neill and I'm Sorry I Love You by Jim Smallman. It makes you want to learn. It's informative without you feeling like you're being talked down to, which can be a big problem with academic papers. But I'm not entirely surprised, to be frank. It has always been something that I've appreciated being in Alice's classes, that there is a sense of being talked to, not talked at. And alongside the fact that this is written with a more casual tone, there are still comedic elements in it. This is a book that made me chuckle a fair few times. It's just not at the forefront as it is with books written by comedians, which, not really all that surprising. Something that you will see throughout the book is that the brain is an organ that doesn't really know what it's doing. It's a very strange little creature that lives behind your eyes, causing problems on purpose. Especially when it comes to more, metaphorical aspects of our lives and our health. With the more metaphorical aspects of us, the brain tends to sort of just go, unfortunately, I have to remind you of this, and I'm going to make it much more visceral. I'm going to make it much more visceral and painful than you could ever have imagined. Fuck you. I don't know why it does that, but it does. It may or may not be related to my parasomnia bingo card, but sometimes I experience an odd sensation just before I fall asleep. It is so subjective, possibly more so than my other sleep phenomena, that it's quite difficult to describe. I have a sense of where I am in my body. I'm the twittering little voice behind my eyes, floating in some abstract space in my skull. It feels as though I have shrunk inside my body. My eyelids feel as though they're miles away. Sometimes it affects different parts of my body or the space I can sense around me. My head might suddenly feel massive, or the bed shrinks to the size of matches. It stops as soon as I open my eyes. 1. God, have I felt this sensation. It makes you feel like you're drunk when you're sober. 2. I am so glad that most people only have this sensation at night, and in Alice's case that she has the ability to stop it, because 3, I've never really been good at articulating how my dissociation works, because it's an incredibly difficult thing to explain because it's so not physical. You know, if I'm having a panic attack, I can describe the feeling in my body. It's like my fight or flight has kicked off and my body doesn't know what to do with that, because it's not like something's actually kicked that off. It's a surge of adrenaline. But with dissociation, that's so much harder because it's all here. It is all quite literally in my head. And I can kind of describe my out-of-body experiences, mostly because people tend to have heard of out-of-body experiences. It's a feeling of floating above oneself, looking down at whatever I'm doing. I often found when I was at uni, I had these during lectures in modules where I was particularly frustrated or struggling. Lit theory was a very common module for me, so during that I was often up above watching myself. Sometimes I was still just shutting off. I think the only time I can recall it not happening in lit theory is the time that in a seminar I managed to turn a conversation from talking about eco-criticism into a conversation about Chicken Run, which is eco-criticism, so it counts, but apparently that's not what you're supposed to be talking about. You're supposed to be using academic papers, but personally, I think I should be allowed to talk about Chicken Run in my academic papers. Anyway, my point is that I've never been able to describe the opposite sensation of the out-of-body experience, a kind of in-my-body experience. Reading that, to be quite honest, had me crying in the middle of the library. And I am getting a little bit emotional talking about it now. Because it's so difficult to explain what is effectively a dream-like state to people who've never experienced that before, and I wouldn't wish those feelings on anybody because it is incredibly distressing. It's like an over-awareness of my body, the space where my personality is within my body, and the space doesn't feel right because I am not the sack of meat, but I am somewhere in here. And that's kind of hard enough when you are trying to get to sleep, because you can kind of pass it off as I'm tired and I'm just trying to go to bed, and the brain's overactive when I'm trying to get to sleep. But when you're just at Tesco buying vegetables and suddenly your brain is very aware of where it is inside your body, kind of distressing. I mean, for want of a better phrase, it's an absolute nightmare. So yeah, very early on, and I will continue these thanks later, but I want to say a thank you to Alice for being able to put into words even when describing something else, being able to put into words something that I've never been able to articulate, kind of to myself as much as anybody else. So, yeah, but I'm not going to get emotional. Well, I look like this, because it'll be an absolute stay. And this book is full of stuff that made me go, oh yeah, I feel that. And I think it will for a fair amount of people as well, because I think a lot of us have had some troubles with sleep to some degree or another. And it constantly shows us that we need to be talking to each other about these things to make us feel normal about it, because they are normal, and most of the time it isn't a sign of something else. I think a lot of us worry that there's something darker going on, when a lot of it is just sleep is a very unusual thing, and the brain fires off weird signals about it because it doesn't know how to structure everything. Most of it isn't a sign of something darker, but talking to each other can help us feel like we're not alone. You know, it's like when she says, I love sleep, even though sleep doesn't always love me. And as someone with a lifetime of sleep troubles, I did feel that in my bones. And in the... Oh my god, that rainbow's got so vivid. Holy shit, it's going so far. Anyway, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And in the spirit of the honesty that is shared throughout this book, I will be sharing some of my own anecdotes when it comes to sleep, because I feel like that's the right thing to do. And as that last quote was from the sleepwalking section, so when I was a kid, I would often wake up not in my bed. Either I had wandered off, usually ending up on the sofa downstairs. It was usually really late at night as well. I would usually end up bathroom or living room. Or I would end up in a bit of a crumpled heap on the floor because I hadn't sleepwalked so much as fell out. I fell out of bed a lot as a child. Now, at some point, I got a loft bed. Not the one that I'm currently sat under, but the same kind of thing, except made of wood. You know, it's the top half of a bunk bed with space underneath so you can put things in it. In it, under it. You know what I'm saying. Now, I'll be honest, that bed caused me 2 major points of pain, but me attempting to swanton bomb my brother when he was stood on the floor and I was on the bed and I tried to swanton him from above isn't really, you know, relevant to what we're talking about. Now, the thing is, these beds do have raised sides so people don't go toppling down the side. You know, I think at the top of the mattress, it's somewhere around 5 feet. I say that because it comes to about the top of my head. I don't know if that one was shorter or taller, but they're all probably about the same-ish. Sorry, I'm going to look at the rainbow for a bit, because oh my god, it's so pretty. I'm going to turn this around and see if it picks up. Is it picking up? It is! There you go. You can see the fact that there is also bird shit on the outside of my window that I can't clear off. How pretty is that? Also, that's picking up a second one, I think. Either way, here's a very pretty rainbow. Riveting content. So, like I was saying, these beds do have bars or a raised side to make sure people don't fall out. But that wasn't stopping little baby Autumn. All I know is that my parents heard a thud and came rushing up because my bedroom was right above the living room. You see, the ladder wasn't sloped and it wasn't like a metal ladder with rungs that you could put your foot kind of, you know, through like that. I think the wardrobe was behind it, like built into the bed, but I think the wardrobe was behind it. So effectively the ladder had a backboard. So you couldn't put your foot on like that. You sort of had to like either put it on sideways or put your toes on it. Now, I was kind of clumsy enough with that when I was awake because it's an awkward bit of furniture, but then add the fact that I'm fast bleeding sleep, right down, thud, I'm on the floor. Now, I was asleep until my parents burst in, woke up like what the hell is going on, realised I'm on a heap, in a heap, on the floor, and, you know, thankfully, you can hear jingling. Zelda's got her collar on and it's new and she's getting used to it, so there may be some jingling from upstairs, on the bed. Anyway, obviously I then put two and two together. I'm like, oh, okay, I've fallen somehow. No idea how it happened, but thankfully I was sore, but no harm done. But I still do get that pang of fear about sleepwalking, even though I wasn't even 10 when that happened, and I don't think I sleepwalked. Sleepwalked. I'm not trying to say the other word for sleepwalking. You can't make me. My mouth will not form that word. I know that I've got some other words coming up later on when it comes to visions and hearing things, and I'm gonna have enough of a struggle with that without trying to say. Nope. I'll put it here. It's probably already on the screen. But like I said, I was a really young kid when I was sleepwalking. I was probably not even 10 by the time it stopped, and that was probably one of the last time it happened. But I think that general fear that I can just get up and wander off really does frighten me, especially with the thought that I could cause myself, or, you know, possibly somebody else, but more the thought of myself generally, cause myself some major problems by being clumsy and hurting myself. And the stories of people who turned into killers when they were sleepwalking probably didn't help that. And though it's been a while since I've read this book, one of my favourite sleepwalking heavy bits of fiction is Pillow Talk by Freya North. I can't say how accurate the stories of sleepwalking are in that, but they seem pretty accurate, if like a lot. But I'm a sucker for a romantic story, and the sleepwalking stuff is really interesting, so there's that. Now, while this technically isn't about sleep or dreams, I did just want to share this one line that, again, I felt right here in my bones and my soul. I felt it. I stumble over my words rather a lot, as though my mouth and brain are out of sync with each other, and this makes it hard to speak up or contribute to discussion sometimes. I know I have a good idea, but if only I could just directly beam it into everyone's heads instead of having to bumble through the sentence like a toddler in a sports day sack race. Now, not only is that an absolute move, and not only is the toddler in a sack race line just absolutely fantastic, I think Alice's honesty throughout this book is what makes it work so well. You're with her on her journey of trying to uncover and understand the sort of world of parasomnias, and you feel like there's someone with you as you discover things for yourself. Like I said, that's why I'm sharing some of my own anecdotes surrounding sleep and the like, because it's what this book encourages. Now, while this next anecdote is more about lucid dreaming on my part, when the story of the woman who had a, let me check, hypnopompic hallucination of the Grim Reaper basically at the bottom of her bed and she stared him down, cool as you like, I was reminded of one of my strangest yet most, I was reminded of one of my, what started out as most frightening and yet became one of my most interesting nightmares. Incredibly vivid, but so strange. So, I'm trapped in my childhood home and something is following me. I run upstairs, turn back to see what it is that's following me, and I'm faced with a creature. It's really difficult to explain because it's not like it's, oh, I can compare it to X, Y, Z. I think at some point in my notes I compared it to what if Junji Ito had made some concept art for Undertale, because it does feel a bit like that. So it's incredibly bulbous and long, like spanning most of the stairs behind me. There's no way it would fit in the rest of my house, but dreams don't work like that, right? And it's got long limbs, and it's like pale grey, like that ashen pale corpse grey, and it's smooth, almost shiny, not wet shiny, just like there's a certain gleam to it, and its head and face is almost human, but not quite, in that distinctly dreamlike uncanny valley type way. Now, generally, in most of my nightmares, and I think that's true with a fair amount of people, no voice. I can't speak, I can't scream, nothing, nada. Not in this dream. For whatever reason, little dream me managed to find the courage to turn to this thing, look it in the eye, and go, fuck off! I remember it so vividly because it wasn't like an angry, screaming, yelling. It was more like when you're trying to work and there's a particularly active group chat and your phone just keeps flashing on, and you know you need to put it on mute, but you're trying to get on with what you're doing, so you just go, oh, fuck off! That's how I yelled at this thing. Exasperated, not angry. And it looked at me with the saddest puppy dog eyes, and then slinked down the stairs. Like somehow it turned on itself, like because it bent around itself, and then like sulked downstairs like a child that's just been told off. And it has probably been minimum a year. I feel like it was possibly even 2, because I feel like it was not that long after I moved into this house, which only happened a couple of years ago. I think it was like after I'd been at uni to start my masters, but then I came home. I think it was around that time. So possibly just stress of moving, I'm thinking of the old house or something like that, but I don't know. I simply wish I had the power that dream me had to look at one of the most monstrous things I've ever seen in my dreams and just tell it to fuck off. I love that for me because I have this feeling sometimes that, while I may not always be the most verbally outspoken, within me, that person exists. One of my favourite recurring themes of this book is the talk of authors, particularly it seems Victorian authors, who would induce or attempt to induce troubled sleep within themselves in order to write better stories. Gothic literature, usually ghost stories and the like. And my favourite is Anne Radcliffe, who decided to eat raw meat in order to give herself food poisoning induced fever dreams for her ghost stories. Like, that's dedication that I will never have. Now, after reading this, I have considered a story that I do want to write. I'm not sharing that because it's in the most early stages it can be, which is, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote that? But I'm not gonna chow down on a bit of raw steak just so I can try to have the worst kind of nightmares. Absolutely not. So I have learned that one of the reasons, perhaps, that I have rarely dealt with sleep paralysis is that we're not really supposed to move that much in our sleep. So, obviously Alice explains this better than me, because she's written a whole book about it. She's a researcher on this kind of thing. But we get sleep paralysis because when we're dreaming of things, like, say, I'm in a dream and I'm playing tennis, the brain shuts down our muscles. It puts, like, the muscles go into a state of paralysis, because if it didn't do that, we would be acting out the things in our dreams. So, if I'm in my dream playing tennis, I'd be smacking a ball, which is kind of fine if I'm on my own. But, say there is somebody else in my bed with me. I mean, to be fair, at the minute, this is going to make me sound like the most spinster, but my cats often sleep in my bed with me. So if I'm, smacking about. But some people don't get this, which I think makes a lot of sense, because when I was younger, if I was ever having to, be in a bed with an older relative, if I'd had bad dreams or whatever, they would often talk about how the fact that they would wake up with, like, bruises because I'm, like, kicking off in my sleep, which is not particularly surprising. I had a lot of nightmares as a child, so yeah, I probably am literally kicking and screaming. But I didn't realise that wasn't normal, or, well, normal was probably not the right word, but it's not the general thing. Most people are still in their sleep. I'm not. It's worse when I'm ill, because if I'm sick and I'm having fever dreams, I can end up with my head where my feet started out. But, like, not that long ago, I move a lot even when I'm, like, fine. The other night, I would say maybe a few nights ago, I was having a strange night, to be honest, a lot of quite vivid dreams, and I woke up at some point in a position that I don't think I could purposely put myself in while awake. Now, I'm quite flexible due to a lovely little bit of loose ligaments, but doesn't mean I'm making that happen. And I woke up in that awkward, like, folded up position, and poor Zelda, bless her, she's just got her little body under my head like she's a pillow. And, like, I woke up with a bit of a, not like a full, like, sitting up fits and starts kind of thing, movie, I've had a nightmare, I'm gonna wake up like that. It's like, no, I just had a bit of a, like, when I woke up, and the poor girl, like, she just smacked me in the face and ran off. So I assume for a while at least I'd possibly been still enough for her to be fine under my head. But as soon as I woke up, bang, and she's off. So yeah, reading that section about paralysis and movement within sleep beyond sleepwalking does make a lot of sense for me. I just thought people who had a lot of vivid dream type sleep problems also moved a lot. Maybe that is true. But again, it does mean that generally I don't have to deal with sleep paralysis, because sleep paralysis tends to come from, like, sleep paralysis demons and like things like that when people talk about it, because the body puts you into that like paralyzed state, and then you're in your not quite dreaming, not quite awake state. Say you're in your dream, you have somebody touch your arm, your brain's still registering that, and it doesn't know what to do with it, because it's like, but I'm awake, but I'm also asleep, and I'm gonna freak out. Because your brain is a strange creature that lives behind your eyes and doesn't really know what it's doing, but also is one of the most intelligent things about us. But it's a complex creature, a little neural network up there of horrible things. But at the end of the day, this isn't just a book about sleep. It's an introspective look from Alice Vernon, and inviting you to be a little introspective about yourself and what goes on within your own sleep as well. It's non-fiction done right. It's incredibly accessible, and I think whether you are aware that you suffer with parasomnias, you know that you don't, I do think that this book is incredibly fascinating and well worth you picking up. As I've discussed, dreams and dream-like states are something that's very important to me personally, and they often remain something that's quite difficult to talk about, because it can be difficult to talk about that without feeling like you have to talk about the reasons you think those are going on. But this book shows that sometimes you can literally just talk about your sleep, because even people who haven't been through a million different things, even people who've had relatively normal lives, have a million little things going on up here. Sleep is a very strange world, and dreams are even stranger, and sometimes it's good to feel like you're not on your own. Even if on my part, the biggest thing that I really took away from this was a way to talk about dissociation, even if that was the only thing I'd taken away from this, even though there is so much more, I just want to give another thank you to Alice for that, and just a whole lot more, really. This is a genuinely fantastic book. And I will leave you with this before talking about some upcoming channel stuff. Sleep isn't just about the number of hours, the time it takes to nod off, or whether you snore or not. Sleep is about stories. It's about monsters and ghosts, desires, aggression, trauma and anxiety, health, creativity, and the state of our inner lives. So, just a heads up, I'm taking a month off, like the whole of November. I'm taking it off. You will have a new video either on the first Tuesday or the first Thursday of December. It depends on whether I split up the big project that I'm doing into a multi-part video. If you go and follow me on... Sorry, I can hear the cat. If you go and follow me on Twitter, then you will be able to get updates on that closer to the time. That'll be in the description below. It's also where, if you don't have the notification bell turned on, which you should, subscribe and have that turned on. It's generally the place where if I'm not posting one week or anything like that, I will post it on there. You will also get other random things on there, like some fun art and things like that, but usually rambling thoughts and ending up with wrestling on your feed because I keep liking things. But anyway, I need to take November off because I have a lot of reading to do, especially I have some big, thick books within this project. I think all in all the book is somewhere between 20 and 25 books. I've read a few of them, filmed the reviews. They're all short, don't worry, this isn't going to be like a big long review for each book and bite-sized reviews, but they are still in the many, so it's something that I'm very aware that I need a bit more time for, and it's difficult for me to do this and, you know, do my regular reviews and continue to do all the research and filming and editing for that at the same time, so taking some time off. Liking, commenting on, sharing this video will all be a great help in the meantime. Also, the obvious subscribing, pressing the little bell, telling your nan. It's all a great little help for me. So, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take care of yourselves. Have a happy Halloween, happy Samhain. I believe Diwali's coming up, so have a happy Diwali. I don't know what other things are coming up. I know that there is a Jewish holiday coming up, but I think that's in December anyway. Have a good time while I'm away. Anyway, like I said, take care of yourselves. Right,